Oh, this is going to work out really well. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and recently some of you have raised the specter of the good idea fairy. You know, that supernatural pixie that sprinkles half-baked ideas in the boss's head after the mission is already underway. Oh, and they give him just enough confidence that, hey, what could go wrong? Well, today I wanted to introduce you to a much more insidious and chaos-inducing phenomenon that lurks the halls of any headquarters where bureaucracy flourishes, and it's called the Christmas tree effect. The way this works is that some big boss, maybe a general officer, commander, or a political appointee, proposes some sort of broad and intuitively appealing but vague initiative. This is often a vision of the future without details about how that future would be achieved or even what the future actually is. It's like commander's intent with lots and lots and lots of layers between the commander and the organization that's actually going to achieve it. Examples that you might have seen include things like quality of life, or a climate action plan, or readiness is number one, or restructuring initiatives. Anyways, what happens is that there's a solicitation of ideas that would help achieve the boss's vague initiative. And this is where the analogy of the Christmas tree comes in, because people start showing up to hang their bright little baubles of ideas on the boss's vision, his Christmas tree. Now, you might expect that most of these proposals are really geared towards achieving the boss's vision. And sure, some of them are going to be, but the vast majority of the little ornaments that get hung on the Christmas tree, well, they're just repackaged versions of objectives that organizations have that have been thinly veiled as supporting the boss's big new vision. Just as an example, I personally believe that the number of recruiters and drill instructors should be based on the size of the recruiting mission and not the size of the final end strength. And believe it or not, this is viewed as an incredibly radical idea, and it doesn't have a lot of support. So, if the Christmas tree was readiness is number one, a guy like me would propose that we increase the number of recruiters and drill instructors because that would result in higher unit readiness on the back end. If the Christmas tree is quality of life, well, then I would say you increase the number of recruiters and drill instructors because that improves the quality of life of the NCOs and the enlisted and their families. If the Christmas tree is the climate action plan, you might have to think about that one for a second, but trust me, I would come up with a way to recommend that we increase drill instructors and recruiters. The point being that the boss's Christmas tree, his big idea, well, it starts to get weighed down by all these competing ideas that may or may not actually support his vision. A remarkable number of initiatives become Christmas trees that are weighed down and eventually collapse under the weight of all the ornaments that get hung on them. But what do you do? Well, as one of my mentors colorfully said, if you don't water your Christmas tree, then it dries out, bursts into flames, and burns your house down. What he meant was that you have to have somebody who keeps an eye out for misguided ideas that detract from the boss's real intent and simply consume resources. Someone who says no, and you would be surprised how difficult it is to find somebody who can perform that task well. Essentially, whoever ends up saying no is going to make a lot of enemies. And this is especially true the vaguer the boss's intent. Anybody who says no to a new ornament, a new idea, is going to get accused of working against the big boss. Personally, I always like to stick a retiring lieutenant colonel on a task like this. You know, somebody whose career is not really going to be impacted by all those no's. One time we got really lucky, and the big boss defined the specific lines of effort he was interested in. He didn't leave it to minions to define it for him, and it made it really easy to point out things that did not belong on his Christmas tree. So if you're in a position to influence the big boss to be at least a little bit specific about what he's really trying to achieve, he's remarkably more likely to have positive outcomes. But what if you're just some hapless intermediary further down the pipeline? Well, notice that this whole Christmas tree phenomenon is really about bundling individual organizational initiatives under the boss's vision. While individual leaders are going to come and go with their own visions of the future, the organizational needs, they really don't change. If and when the Christmas tree collapses, the ornaments, they don't go away. So when the time comes that you have to deal with some 1,000 points of light kind of initiative, it's important to recognize that the individual points of light are individual. Advance those individual initiatives as much as you can and expect them to reappear and reorganize under the next leader's new vision. And now, if you want to see another video that explains why bureaucrats say no, even if they don't know themselves, watch this video about the so-called Chesterton fence.